All right, hello and welcome. Super excited to be here, everybody. I'm Crawford McCarty, Senior Director of Marketing here at Verusen, and I want to welcome you on this webinar presentation of 2023 New Year's resolutions, resolving the conflict between procurement and ops. Quick note, there will be a Q&A at the end of this presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit questions by clicking that button at the bottom of your screen. Now, while the diets, fitness classes, and weight loss might not stick around for long, there's one New Year's resolution you can't afford to break, and that is bridging the gap between procurement and operations teams in your supply chain. While the divide appears to be the easiest way to handle the two distinct processes, their separation leads to competing initiatives and does more harm than good. So with that being said, let's explore that separation a bit and talk through how you can ensure these two teams are walking in lockstep. Joining us is Paul Noble, founder and CEO of Verusen. Paul's extensive experience in supply chain began when he continued to run into the same pains that most of us experience. He was so peeved he went and founded a company. With Paul is Danny Ramos, Senior Product Manager here at Verusen. Danny brings a wealth of knowledge to how and why Verusen can assist the world's largest organizations with their optimization initiatives. Gentlemen, hello.
Hey, hello there. Good morning.
Good morning.
Where everyone's joining us from today. Thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. And hey, we're kicking off with New Year's resolutions. Anything exciting for either of you?
So I really don't do New Year's resolutions. Maybe I should, because I still haven't found my way to the gym as much as I would like.
Yeah, I'm still jogging, but tomorrow is February, so we'll see if it lasts into tomorrow. But
yeah, I think I've read. I think that the February 1st is the resolution day. It's like 50% of the world gives up on their resolution by then. Yeah. But hey, let's talk corporate resolutions. That's why everyone's here today. What have you two heard while out and about? Probably the same old story, right, Danny? What do we got going on in the corporate resolution world?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, well, one of the things that's really exciting is we just wrapped up our annual state of supply chain report where we're surveying, global organization leaders and trying to understand the pain points that are affecting them. And, reducing the cost to serve their customers was really, really high on the list, which really isn't all that surprising considering that fulfilling customer promises has gotten costlier as expectations have really skyrocketed over these last couple of years. Another top priority and something that shouldn't be a big surprise to folks is continuing to reduce those unplanned downtimes. So it kind of falls in line with that customer promise and that ability to meet SLAs and the amount of money that each time, each minute that you're down costs you, more and more than just that financial value. There's reputational hits that you can really face as well. But I think the number one priority that we heard loud and clear from our respondents is really reducing the supply risk for their materials and ensuring that those plants have the critical materials that they have to keep production running. That's definitely a big key focus for organizations.
Lovely, lovely, yeah. And Paul, as the founder, you've got your ear kind of to the grindstone, if you will. Can you talk to me about what you're hearing in terms of AI, ML? How does that all fit into what Danny just mentioned?
Yeah, eyes wide open, ears to the ground, with customers and partners. So we just put out a piece on Forbes that talked about kind of 5 big things that we'll continue to see. So everyone's continued to drive nearshoring to firm up operations and reduce supply risks, like Danny talked about. We have seen an accelerated adoption of technology in general, but purpose-built intelligence for specific parts of the supply chain that have been a little riskier than others. So I think we'll continue to see that, and we're trying our best to build awareness around how you do that, how you can make it simple and less overwhelming. I think collaboration is really key. It talks to supply risks. It speaks to as well, doing more with your best suppliers. Eliminating tail spend is a huge thing that we're hearing because you had to get everything from wherever you could get it over the last couple of years. So I think there's going to be a lot of cleanup on the procurement side. And what we're going to be talking about here today is how do you mesh that with availability, with what operations needs. Those traditionally misaligned incentives are very difficult to overcome. And then there's some new wrinkles or flavors in the mix that are continuing to make that a challenge that, we have some good guidance and a blueprint for. And we started talking about it. I don't know if it was on this or another podcast. I think it was about 12 months ago. We were saying, hey, the CFOs are going to come calling. They're going to go, why do we have so much stuff everywhere in inventory? And so we're starting to see that quite a bit where, it was all about ensuring yourself that you had it. And now everyone's dramatically overinsured and needs to get back to that kind of balance, both from a buy side and an inventory side.
Super interesting. And I noticed you both mentioned balance, cooperation between procurement and operations. A lot of organizations believe it's one or the other, but not both. Like, shameless plug, we can do both. Let's talk about that. Paul, you started Verusen because you didn't want to compromise. You knew that companies could do both. We've seen the market shift towards a one initiative. I've seen it everywhere, the one company initiative. It's a bit confusing to say out loud, but can you give me some more background on what a one initiative is and why everyone's doing it?
Yeah. So, McKinsey really hit it out of the park with that one initiative that they got everyone bought into, or whoever did that. But everyone seems to be adopting it, right? It makes sense, but it's systems, process, people inhibit the ability for an organization to really say, what do we need as an organization, and not default to, it's just too complex, it's too hard. Just let everyone do what they need to do, and we'll try to, run sourcing events or try to manage it, or put in some shadow accounting, whatever it may be, to bury the waste, bury the inefficiencies. So what we're really talking about is across systems, across business units, what does the organization need that they can take strategic initiative on and satisfy anyone down in the storeroom up to the C-suite. And that's, really a big part of what we're looking to drive. And what you're seeing specifically with organizations as we come into this kind of recessionary period, you're going to see more M&A, whether it's in distribution or in manufacturing. That's going to add complexity. And if you're turning to kind of the same processes that you have traditionally, you're going to be kicking out these efficiencies for years to come.
Excellent. And when we talk about these things of doing it sustainably, making sure you're growing through them, or growing, but growing in a sustainable manner. Sustainable can mean a lot of things. It can mean sustainable sourcing, sustainable operations and methods, sustainable supply chain. Danny, how do organizations view sustainability? Not even organizations, how do departments, procurement and ops? Sustainability means two different things. What are we talking about when we keep hearing sustainability?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you kind of hit it right there, right, Crawford? Like, folks have been talking a lot about sustainability. Environmental sustainability is often what you hear the most. And I think historically, companies have really treated their procurement and operations teams as two totally separate entities. And there was a lot of good reasons for doing that in the past. But as companies are trying to take on these more ambitious sustainability goals from a climate perspective, or from the circular supply chain perspective, those old ways of working don't really get you where you need, because you have disparate data sources, you have disparate sources of truth, you have misaligned incentives. And really, to get to those new levels, you have to find new ways of working. And that starts with better collaboration between these two groups, and separating these workflows, like I said, made a ton of sense at the time. But as we're kind of moving into this new world, you really have to start to look for opportunities where you can bring those two functional groups together for positive collaboration. I mean, I think a good example of that is looking at ways to, redeploy existing overmax inventory. So instead of writing stuff off, or, scrapping things at facilities because they're not going to get used there, leveraging, those networks. And I think those are good opportunities for these two groups to come together, get some wins kind of in this new world, and set a good precedent going forward.
Yeah, in this new world. And it's funny you say that, because we get settled in this new world, and then something comes along and throws a wrench. And before the webinar started, I took a glance at some of the companies in attendance, and I know that they know this all too well, whether we're talking about a breaker shortage causing new construction delays caused by COVID, turning everyone into a DIY renovation expert. Demand goes through the roof. It could be truck drivers refusing to work, causing trailer orders to fluctuate. It could be the supply chain executives around the world drowning their sorrows, causing liquor demand to spike. Any number of things could happen out of our control that causes all sorts of chaos in the supply chain. How do we deal with that, Danny?
Yeah, no, I mean, those very oddly specific circumstances have definitely led to to organizations finding new ways to kind of lean on each other, and specifically procurement and operations management, to facilitate more efficient and more streamlined collaboration to kind of make our way through this growing uncertainty.
Love it. Yeah. And hey, there are ways to bridge the gap. I love that phrase, bridge the gap. So Paul, let's bridge the gap here. Why does procurement care about more than just the bottom line? Why do they care about things like spare parts?
Yeah. So, touching on one, quick thing that you and Danny were talking about, it from a sustainability standpoint, there's a ton of waste in supply chain, right? It starts with data. I don't trust the data, so I make gut feel decisions, both in ops and procurement. And then, what we've traditionally seen is, because of the data, it's hard for ops to really, trust that they have what they need where they need it. So they're always, and, can't see that inventory and that kind of one strategy. So everyone tries to buy better. And, the approach that we've taken, and, as procurement has become inherently more strategic, what we're looking at is, how do I know what to buy if I don't know what I need and I'm not on the same page with my ops personnel? And what you've traditionally seen, and many of you here or listening to the recording have said, all right, we need to run a sourcing event. We need to buy better. Oh, we've got this rock solid contract. Let's roll it out. And then, right? And then it's, you didn't know this, you didn't know that, you didn't know this, can't buy it from there. I need to get it from here. And that's where the execution part, of the rubber meeting the road doesn't happen. So those, when we're talking about traditionally misaligned incentives, that's what we're talking about. Procurement charged with driving out cost, ops charged with, maintaining uptime. And, that speaks very closely to spare parts and indirect MRO materials, because they are just a huge insurance policy. So if you related that back to your personal life, would you just overinsure yourself if you could have the same risk coverage? Would you pay double, triple to have that same risk coverage if there was a carrier that could come and help you achieve a better balance there? It's the same concept. So while you can drive out cost savings because you're buying more effectively, you're getting people to put their names on things of, this is what I need. So if I know what I need here, I know what I need across a network. So I know what I need to buy and who to buy from, and they can put it near me. And so you start building more network resiliency, not just on bingo card, supply chain bingo, but actually living it, actually aligning and getting what you need from a personnel standpoint or an incentive standpoint, while also satisfying the incentives of your counterparts across the business.
Yeah. And I think you said it best earlier, finance is going to come calling and wonder why you wrote off millions of dollars. Procurement thinking strategically about MRO not prevents, but gets you ahead of that.
Yeah. MRO doesn't have to be kind of this black hole anymore where it's just like, it's too hard, kick it to Granger, whomever else.
Yeah.
Let them do their best, which it makes their job more difficult too. So by capturing and really understanding what you need from a demand perspective helps you buy from the right folks and align with those that you want to buy from.
Love it. All right. We've twisted the knife. We've made it pretty clear that there's some pain in the supply chain world. What can our listeners do? What's step one to bridging this gap, Danny?
Yeah, I think really the first thing is increasing the visibility, which is going to help you minimize some of that downtime. One of the, I think kind of most jarring statistics that stood out to me from that survey was that 65% of survey respondents to that Data Supply Chain survey said that they have no visibility into to analyze spare parts pricing or suppliers in real time. So if you can't see what's going on, it's very, very difficult to make smart decisions, and it's very difficult to implement any strategy without that visibility. And it speaks to some of those challenges we were talking about earlier, where data is fragmented across multiple departments, leading to those data silos. And once that data is buried, and it gets outdated very quickly, you have a lack of confidence in the data from one department to another. So, harmonizing that data across your entire MRO strategy, providing better visibility, allows for those collaboration opportunities between procurement operations, and allows them to really get their activities kind of into a single platform, shed some light on what the true state of the data is, and you don't have to fix your data if you know how to use it, right? So if you use a tool that can leverage that data in its current state, you can get right into implementing that strategy and right into kind of improving those operations.
You said something really powerful there, and I want to go back to it. You said you don't have to fix your data if you know how to use it. Now, in the past, how do you fix this, right? You do a data cleanse, it takes 2 years,
Right.
3 years. I think we've beaten that horse to death. Just give me 10-second, what do you mean you don't have to fix your data?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody here knows, right, that your data is going to get stale very quickly. So if you start operating from the assumption that data is going to get stale very quickly, and you build those kinds of assumptions into the baseline of any tool set, you can start leveraging data that interacts with real life, but still draw the meaningful insights out of it and still take meaningful actions without necessarily forcing everybody into really, really strict governance processes that are difficult to implement and even more difficult to maintain.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of takes what Paul was just talking about, the guesswork out. So Paul, when you've got this visibility, when you've got this insight into what's in your supply chain, your supply network, what does that unlock for you?
Yeah, that helps. There's a tremendous amount of resource and time on the supplier side, as well as the user end user side, going through sourcing events, right? So, we have to, it's 3-year contracts coming up. Let's go category by category. Let's spend a year. Let's get our data prepped to prepare for this. So you're 12 to 18 months in, you're running sourcing events consistently to try to drive out costs, but you end up only getting kind of a piece of the pie. Where we see the future and where we're building towards is the ability for organizations to understand every time they buy a material that they're buying it from the right place at the right price at the right time, and you're essentially real-time sourcing versus events, right? You can still give a category to a specific supplier that aligns with those supplies and those materials, but I would try to kind of refactor your understanding or challenge yourself to say, we should be able to do more of this faster and not rely solely on sourcing events that, again, also go stale. And it, again, starts with data, and you end up having these unnecessary bottlenecks and disruptions and inefficiencies that cost you money and potentially cost you production that don't need to be there with some simple steps.
Yeah, it's so change management is essentially what you're talking through. And it sounds like, I mean, obviously there's a huge cost benefit here. You talked about cost savings or cost avoidance earlier, but there's also a resiliency that you're kind of building towards by knowing what you have, where you have it.
Being able to, and it was what we predicated kind of the founding of the business on, is like, what if I could understand my data in its natural language and not have to clean it constantly and chase perfect data? It's been proven that it's a failed strategy. And what if I can instead look out to my supply network and understand, I call it this, they call it that, it's the same thing, I need it here, I need it there, and have models working together to remove the analysis, remove the data uncertainty, and deliver me a result I can make a decision on and can work with my counterparts on. And it really, again, somewhat sounds too good to be true, but there are more and more solutions, not just us in our space, but across logistics and other parts of the supply chain that are enabling that. And I think it's been in market long enough that it's the time to not look at it as a future, look at it as a now strategy.
I love it. Yeah. And you said something pretty powerful there at the near the end of consolidation leads to collaboration. And, we talk about how procurement can do these great things and operations can do these great things. And Danny, how do they do these great things together?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about collaboration a few times already, this morning, but but I think it's worth bringing up because that is going to be one of the big changes that are going to happen. Obviously we all kind of have a dog in the race here, with a tool like Verusen, but this is where finding those tools that can help foster that collaboration is important, because you're going against years of using separate strategies for procurement and operations, and that's really robbing those opportunities for collaboration. And you have to kind of break that mold, and break that mold by creating opportunities for collaborating, right? So the ways that things are going now, that leads to a ton of inefficiencies. There's kind of that ripple effect across the entire system, since there's no timely exchange of information or prompt communication between these teams and the kind of the disparate management systems. Organizations can't respond as quickly to disruptions if they can't collaborate quickly, right? So if a business has more fires burning than they can put out, then it's obviously a very real threat to its survival, right? So not only do you have that, kind of that existential threat, but kind of in a less dramatic sense, right? Like these kinds of collaborations help you point out things like rogue spending, and when you couple those things with powerful algorithms, you'll be able to find valuable insights and eliminate some of those really inefficient processes that you've got going on today.
Excellent. And for the folks tuning in, I know that this probably sounds like a pipe dream. It's not. As the director of marketing here at Verusen, I kind of see these case studies come across my desk fairly regularly. Paul, you see them, right at the front of the line. Can you talk to me a bit? Give me an example. How have some of our customers reached across the aisle and worked together? Do you have a case study off the top of your head?
Yeah, I got dozens of them. What's been exciting is we've been able to kind of apply this approach to systems, process, people, and kind of simplify, configure, and then drive sustainability, which is kind of that main differentiation with this new approach. With data no longer as a blocker, what we're able to do is get everyone that needs to look at these types of decisions, whether they use it once a month or once a quarter and they're in reliability engineering, or they use it every day as a system of routine. We're in a single experience working together and being able to make decisions that can actually be executed. So it's not, it doesn't fall as you're, kind of passing the spreadsheet via email to your counterpart and can't track things. So specific examples that, we initially never intended to support reliability, but with our search capability, being able to find a duplicate material when you have unplanned downtime and your supplier gives you an 8-week lead time on getting that part, but being able to find it at a sister plant that you can get it there and expedite and save $500,000 to $1 million. That happened with a Fortune 500 pulp and paper packaging company. Additionally, being able to actually drop in virtual networks and say, hey, we know that these bottling plants or these mills or these, you pick geography or like type of plants that I can actually run scenarios and run a network model in 24 hours. Like that typically would take years to do, and you would only have it kind of in a snapshot of time, or you had to really rely on, heavy, intense central store where you have people, physical, brick and mortar investments, new systems, all to try to drive out the waste. So kind of coming over top and being able to allow you to do that virtually, allow you to be able to do that quickly, really drives execution and speed to value. And it has been able to, again, put more people into the same experience and actually get people to put their names on things, which we know helps build trust, which helps build execution. And it's, a big part of what's going to be the future of supply chain. So this is not just about, hey, we found a contract that, we can save on piece price anymore. Procurement's a lot more strategic these days. And you're going to be able to not only see what could potentially be there, but be able to hold yourselves and your suppliers accountable to what actually got to the bottom line and track that. And we've been able to go from what the data tells us, what the people agree to now what actually hit the P&L. And that's been the holy grail, or, the elusive part of the equation, typically that gets, I guess, buried in different accounting methods.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off of what Paul's saying there, our approach is really simple. Like we've hit on, kind of his various points here. We operate under the assumption that there is going to be dirty data, and we provide that visibility even kind of in spite of that, right? So, in that example that Paul was alluding to with our search capabilities, that's something that folks can take advantage of on day one, right? It's the kickoff for the Verusen team is really just 30 days. You're starting to see a return on investment really quickly, and that kind of visibility is something that happens day one. So, being able to understand inventory at other facilities, things like that is something that we can do really, really easily for folks. And, there's beyond that, right, to Paul's point about, putting a name on it, making those decisions, that process itself is incredibly quick as well. We've seen with some of our customers, folks identify, $100,000 in savings, in 20 minutes reviewing a few recommendations. So, before your coffee cools down, you've already found $100,000 for your, in your storeroom. So, really, really quick ROI, really, really light effort in terms of the resources required on the other side. And yeah, just simple.
You reminded me I need some more coffee. Paul, we've got about 4 or 5 questions that have come in, but I want to give you the final word before we jump into questions. Can you summarize it for us? What do we got to do in 2023?
Yeah, you'll hear us talking a lot about it. I think it's less about, can we or other things do the things that you've wanted to do for many years, right? So I think there's a lot more capability now in market with Verusen or others, different parts of the supply chain. I think the big thing is getting your leaving your fear of messing up or some of your internal challenges behind you and get started. It's pretty easy. It's very quickly, don't worry about what didn't work in the past. Assess what is here now that can help lay a foundation for your organization in the future. It can be very small, or it can, you can tackle a larger portion of that. And don't be overwhelmed with it. And you can, again, bring your counterparts in the room and have a pretty exciting, intelligent conversation that can both drive out capital, plant by plant, by network, extend to your suppliers, plant floor automation, and do a lot of the things that you've been doing in isolation and haven't been able to scale up. That's the difference these days.
Love it. All right, so we've got time for a few questions here. We've had about 4 or 5 come in. This first one, I'm not sure if it should go to Danny or Paul, so I'll let you two fight over it. It's from Philip. Is Verusen using AI to do most of your clients' supply chain evaluations and needs assessment data?
Yeah, I'll tackle that. And then if you would like Danny to, add on anywhere. So we use kind of multiple models behind the scenes to, power the product in the front end of what you see. So what we're doing is essentially using models that can go in and read material data and movements of data. So first we'll read 500,000, 1 million materials. We'll start consolidating those things into what we call duplicate groups. And that'll say, hey, these 10 things we think at a high confidence, because we've trained these models with tens and tens of millions of materials and MRO parts, that these 10 things are one. If you can confirm that, we can apply that to your inventory, your procurement, and your risk strategy, which then feeds a model that really is, we didn't reinvent inventory optimization models. What we did is we did not have to have perfect data. So it's how we feed data into those models and then how we present it to a person to be able to tell us something else, right? If it looks good, you can agree with it. If it doesn't, tell us what you need to know that would typically inhibit you from taking that recommendation, so that we learn from that knowledge transfers and influences, the next recommendation or the opportunity to eliminate tail spend, and just starts pulling these things together so you can make a decision without intensive analysis. And there's some other things that, we're working on to improve RFQ, RFP automation, both on the supplier and the user side. That's really exciting. But those are the general ways that we're doing it, and we can feed that through the platform and get you back a needs assessment within days if you can get us access to a portion of your data.
Excellent. Danny, anything to add, or are you good?
I mean, I think the only thing that I would add is that, you might be asking like, well, we can hire data scientists and do some of this ourselves, right? But one of the benefits of working with a platform like Verusen is that we get to, see a bunch of other things, right? So we're able to, our models are trained on to Paul's point, millions and millions of materials. So you get to take advantage of that as well, right? So,
Yeah, that's a key point, Danny. Any one organization does not have enough data to feed models appropriately to boost the confidence levels to where they need to be.
And great. This next question is pretty much a piggyback on that. It's from Ryan. It's, how can I be sure AI is making the right decision or a good decision? I don't want it going rogue on me. Yeah.
So you have full control over this. Danny can get into some details, but typically AI or even scenario models that are used in business planning, advanced planning type things tend to be black boxes, and that's where trust falls and execution falls. So when we were developing this, we wanted it to be as transparent as possible. So when you look at a recommendation that's made, you can agree with it, you can disagree with it, and you can look at every piece of data that went into that decision. So if you know something different, and most of the case, we estimate probably 50% or more of data that goes into these types of decision lives outside of the system because it's just too difficult to get it in. And so now you have that power to quickly say, this is why, and start transferring that knowledge to the system. And you have full control on how much you automate or how much you still have control over. So it's very configurable for your risk profile, if that's a concern.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think this is, the humans in the system is one of the things that makes Verusen really as powerful as it is, right? The models that we generate and the recommendations that we generate are great conversation starters. They're great ways to kind of reevaluate inventory parameters that you might not have looked at in a long time. And then, obviously you get the benefit of some of that big data to provide those recommendations. But I think one of the more compelling things, and kind of going back to the point about collaboration earlier, is that it's really easy in the platform to capture some of that institutional knowledge that Paul was speaking to and share that across departments. So you can ensure that when a final decision gets made on a material, the right folks have been involved in the process and you've captured all of their institutional knowledge. So it's not just helpful today, but it's helpful on a go forward basis if you need to go back and audit that decision in the future.
Yeah, and it enhances the systems that you or your IT department have invested in, whether it's an ERP upgrade, an EAM system, whatever it is. I mean, we are very much kind of a brain you plug in and enhance that fills that gap between systems of record and business applications that are data dependent, like procure to pay and things like that. So it's better experience, fill white space, fill gaps, and make the supply chain stack work better.
Excellent. And I had a follow-up question that came in, Danny, basically right after you said that, we provide more than just more data than any one company has. The follow-up question is, how would you apply that to an emerging industry like the wind industry that is not yet established in the US?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? And I think this is one of those ways in which being able to leverage other organizations really kind of helps, right? In these nascent emergent industries, there's going to be unique tool sets, there's going to be unique inventory challenges for each of those, certainly. But particularly in the world of maintenance, right? Like there's still a good opportunity for a fair bit of overlap, right? Wrenches are wrenches in a lot of cases. And so you can still leverage some of those benefits. And then, fortunately, with the more data, the next win customer is going to be able to take advantage of that as well. So.
Thank you.
And I would say too, there's, just piggyback on that, Danny, what we at Verusen have developed is kind of a vertical agnostic, system agnostic. It's less about what you do. It's more about your systems, your processes, your people that we're truly solving for. So, even without specificity or 10 win clients that we've or customers that we've worked with, you're still going to be able to apply because we're solving for your ERP system challenges, your ops and procurement working together challenges, the trust that people will put their name on challenges, things that are foundationally inhibiting the sustainability of these efforts.
I gotcha. And all right, so next question. This is back towards bridging the gap. It always, you got to say bridging the gap at least 20 times.
That'll be our next webinar.
This is from Shafak. It says, I would agree that conflict between procurement and operations is mostly inevitable. My question here is, with functional conflict, what positive effects or outcomes have been observed from functional conflict?
Yeah. So starting point is essentially what typically was, hey, we want to reduce inventory here. We want to drive spend to this other supplier. Well, no, you didn't know this, and this. I'm not going to do it. I feel like I'll open myself up to risk. I just need to keep the plan up and running. That everyone has that type of story, or, overstocked on a motor because you ran out 10 years ago. We're going to have that baggage hanging on of, remember the pandemic and what happened? If that happens again, we got to, stay over inventoried or, whatever it may be, de-risk ourselves. So de-risking based on gut feel versus data is a completely different situation. So that's why we've built into the platform the ability to agree or disagree. So you at least plant a flag, you make a decision that you can look at the outcomes of those decisions. So that helps build trust. And that's the most positive effect that we've observed, is that you're finally seeing that strategic alignment across business unit, across geography, across plants that typically has been very, very hard to achieve other than in isolation. And those outcomes help take the big swings in months where you'd still be cleaning data. Now you're actually executing things to the bottom line. And that to me has been the biggest thing. I don't know if you've seen any other things, Danny or Crawford.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have seen in terms of kind of more positive collaboration experiences is, a pretty common story is we'll have procurement or storeroom folks that are working with ops folks to identify, kind of critical parts or parts that might be good candidates for, sharing across facilities or things like that. And being able to provide some of those suggestions in a platform that fosters collaboration really adds a ton of efficiency to that process. It's not, I'm going to pull a bunch of data out of an ERP and then book a meeting, and then we're going to talk about it. And then folks are going to say that the data is bad by the time the meeting happens and all those kinds of things. Everybody can just hop into a platform, look at all of the information and make those decisions, kind of in a group setting in a way that I think is really beneficial. And I think it's healthy conflict, right? Like, not all conflict is bad. And this is a good opportunity to have some healthy tension and arrive at policies that truly do make sense for everybody, right? That are going to ensure that you're covered without, over insuring yourself at the same time.
Yeah, I like what you said, plant the flag and build trust between teams, right? Because it's the healthy conflict here is Verusen's not providing the answer. We're providing the data and you make the decision beyond that. So it's great that it starts the conversation.
Yeah, and it's empowering, right? It allows you to, again, know that there are efficiencies to be had, but you just can't wrap your arms around it, right? That's been, many of you on the call and just other, customers and partners that we work with, that's always been the case, especially on the indirect side of things. So, that to us is the biggest kind of driver of build, again, throughout our entire platform website, it's all predicated on trust, and it, eliminates some of the questions that we've gotten around Skynet and AI. And this is completely empowering and augmenting people so that you're not handcuffed by data and systems.
It wouldn't be a conversation about AI without bringing up Skynet.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Last question, Danny. I think this is for you. It says, I don't have time for a 2-year project. I don't have time for a 6-month project. You mentioned on day one, I'd have insights. How is that possible? The data alone is such a mess.
Yeah, absolutely. The apprehension is understandable, right? A lot of folks have been burned by promises of quick ROI. But there's a couple of things that I think make Verusen unique in that regard. So first and foremost, we've got native connectors to all of the major ERPs and major like data lake services and things like that. So that process of connecting is much easier with a tool like Verusen. So it's not as burdensome on your IT team and not as burdensome on the folks that are going to be doing that data collection. Secondarily, we also have a little biased, but I think we have a top-notch onboarding team that really helps folks throughout that process to ensure that, you know, we're mapping whatever data you have to what's going to work and play nicely with the Verusen system. So eliminating a lot of that headache. And then once we make that data connection, that's where really some of the, you know, the AI and natural language processing really takes over. Once we have those feeds from those different facilities, you know, plugged into the Verusen platform, that's when you're able to start leveraging things like the search capabilities and some of the procurement insights that we're just taken straight from your, you know, disparate data sources and combining into a single pane of glass in the Verusen platform.
Excellent.
Yeah, I would, and this isn't throwing shade on the past, right? This is all about getting better for the future. But, you know, we have to clarify, right? Because everyone, if I'm buying a software product, most business, especially SaaS business applications, don't work well without good data is always the mantra. So I'm going to end on this, and you can certainly add more to it, Crawford, but this is a clarification we often have to do with customers that we're in deep conversation on and like, yeah, this is really cool. And we gloss over it because we do it so much, but essentially, if you're adopting Verusen, when you sign up, that timeline is dramatically compressed, you know, nearly 10x to what you would get out of a inventory optimization or a procurement analytics platform or a risk platform, because you cut off the 9 to 12 months of data, even call it 6. Then you typically understand that you're going to have an SI to actually make it work. Throw another 6 months on there. So you're already 12 to 18 months in before you're able to do anything with that, let alone the resources internally that you have to put towards that. So that is a big part of how we're changing the game outside of the AI, outside of the technology. It's just eliminating that speed to value or improving that speed to value by eliminating those steps where you're simply buy, onboard, in, working within that, you know, kind of 60-day period is a complete game changer. And it's, you know, magical when it happens.
Absolutely. And no, I think that's a great way to wrap up. We're right at 45, which is getting close to lunchtime for some. So Paul, Danny, always a pleasure. For everyone online watching the recording later, you know, we will be sending out an email right after this presentation's over with a recording of the webinar. You're welcome to forward it to all of your friends and colleagues. Paul, Danny, it was great having you. Looking forward to doing this again. For everyone else, I'm Crawford. Thanks and have a great day.